The energy emergency of mid-February affected every aspect of Basin Electric's operations. This month, we are going to focus on that event and give you a bit of detail from several different areas of the cooperative, starting with Tom Christensen, our Senior Vice President of Transmission Engineering and Construction. He says likely 3 factors contributed to the event: generation facilities that couldn't operate, energy imports that were cut down quickly, and record use of power due to cold weather.
You know, it was cold, and so there was some record load levels that we saw, particularly records in the southern part of the system. Ours was high as well. The other thing is there was generation unavailability. That had an impact for sure. And even there was a significant amount of imports that were occurring. And you know, SPP was okay as long as those imports were coming in. And where we saw the load curtailments ultimately occurred right after the imports were curtailed, and those curtailments happened fairly fast, and it led to ultimately a limited amount of time to react. SPP has instituted a comprehensive review of it, and so that we'll see what comes out of that, find out what actually did happen for sure, make sure we aren't drawing any false conclusions. And then act appropriately. But I think we're going to have some increased reliability measures for wintertime events. What exactly those are, you know, I think that'll be determined.
Christensen says the electrical outages in Texas during this time period didn't directly affect Basin Electric on the electricity side, as that power grid is separated from the rest of the country. However, natural gas pipelines are shared across state lines and did contribute to natural gas shortages, including in the southern end of Southwest Power Pool. He says Basin Electric staff sits on several SPP committees, and he sits on the members committee, which is at the table during SPP board meetings. He says lessons from how the emergency played out in Texas can be applied to SPP.
What we saw in ERCOT, their cuts got pretty deep and they lasted a long time. And one of the problems that you have is that on certain feeders, certain circuits, you're always going to have some critical facilities, whether it's a hospital, fire department, whatever. Some of those things are pretty critical, and you shouldn't be shutting those down. Well, that leaves only so much other load that can be curtailed. And when the curtailments get as deep as they happened in ERCOT, there's some of the, quote, non-critical loads that stay off for a long time. And that, I think, was evident in some of the ERCOT documentation. ERCOT had these recommendations, and they actually followed through on them, generally, as I understand it, but they had no enforcement mechanism. And I think that's probably a lesson to be learned for them and us, is that if we go forward and we're going to try and prevent this, we're going to have some type of enforcement mechanism or an incentive to be able to perform under cold weather events.